Wayne's World. Wayne's World.
We have to do, yeah.
Like,
we need
Wayne,
more music.
you guys are bobbing your head.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we're live yet or not. Hold on.
It says it's now streaming. Yeah.
Let's say we're streaming. I can see. We'll never figure this out. We're always going to figure out. Never going to figure out if we're actually live.
Yeah. It says this time Suzie and Matt are joined by fellow recruitDC board member Tiffany Ballve. Live.
Oh, good. You just did your own intro. Thanks a lot.
Oh, there you go.
No, we're live. We're live. I got the picture.
And I'm not seeing anything on my Facebook, so I'm again for some reason I'm just gonna.
Did you refresh?
That out a little bit later.
Did you refresh it? I had to refresh to see.
Okay, hold on. Here we go. Live. Okay, there we go. Yay!
All right, guys. Welcome again to another awesome adventure of recruitDC Facebook chat live. Obviously, you heard her introduce herself. We have Tiffany here with us this week, and as with me, as always, is Suzie. Another Wayne's World reference we had. Hopefully that didn't go live. I don't know if it did or not, but I don't really care. But and I'm not in my basement this time. But we are on the Starship Enterprise. We are in Mario Land, and we are at Pee-wee's Playhouse. So that's great. So I'm glad Suzie, you got your stuff. Yeah. I'm glad you got your new background up. I know it's been a struggle with you to figure out which background to use.
Yeah. Prina, thank you again. This is all for you. I'm going to try to challenge myself to up my game every single broadcast.
I want to see video next week. I want to see a bit of motion background. I want to see that. It's quick steps,
Already turning. She's like,
So
we shall William Shatner and see if he can do a guest promo for me.
You can find his random Zoom backgrounds on online places. This one actually, Paul Rubin put stuff out on his own website, seeing that people were actually using Pee-wee's Playhouse, and he's like, "Send pictures of me doing it if you using my background." And so you can go to the different random places and get that. Please don't. All right, so we were talking before we went live here about some things we wanted to chat about. Some of it's going to be, again, more about some of the resources we see out there as far as free and some low-cost options for some training and other ways to keep engaged, to keep your skills sharp while we do this. We also talked about, Tiffany's I've seen your face on Facebook and LinkedIn over the last 2 weeks. You've been doing a lot of chats and webinars and stuff like that. So we'll talk a little bit about some of your background and your experience. Suzie, what am I missing? We talked about a couple different things here.
I think, one of the reasons that we are doing this is to help those individuals who are looking for ways to stay engaged while we're all being sheltering in place. And some of the things that we're doing is offering free training opportunities for those people who were affected but want to still work on professional development. So why don't we kick it off with two free upcoming activities. One of them is by HRTX Virtual. It's a $500 training program that they're giving away for free for registration for, I think it's next Thursday. It's a 4-hour-long training session. Definitely well worth it. I tried to log on for the first one, and unfortunately I was one of the ones that got the "we are all filled up" message. So I would encourage individuals to register early and log in early. Don't think you can log in 10 minutes and still make the call.
Well, I got a note on that afterward. They upped their limits on attendees. So I think they had one of the like a base package, and it maxed out real fast. So I think they moved it up a little bit, and I don't think they have the same concerns, but I would still heed that warning.
Well, they did.
I got on, and it was fine.
They were targeting 2,000, and they had over 4,000 people register. So
I think their threshold is 5K now.
That's awesome. So I'm not going to miss it this time. So we will post the link to the HRTX Virtual, which is all around recruiting technology. Is that my understanding? Since I've never attended, is it HR technology? HRTX?
Well, it used to be. It was kind of a broad HR technology, and it kind of focused in onto the sourcing and recruiting side of things after a while. So the last one I was on was all sourcing and recruiting based.
Okay.
And that's the one I attended one in DC last year, and that was, I think it's just become all sourcing and recruiting, I should say.
All right. And then HRTX, in addition to that one, there's someone who reached out to me to want to share that he's creating a 1 week long program called HR Summer School, which starts the week of June 1st. And we'll try to include this in our upcoming newsletter that's going to be targeted for the same time frame. It's a free 1 week long training. It's obviously designed for HR professionals, but there are components dedicated specifically to talent acquisition. And then you can see the agenda online and figure out which days and times are the best for you to attend, specifically for those people who are looking for talent acquisition focused type of training. But if you are a human capital professional that does recruiting as because you're a one-stop shop for your company, then maybe you want to look into sort of the whole week-long training. Again, all free. They are accepting donations to help if you want to, but it's optional.
And Eileen wrote in, yes, 25 free credits. So that's good. And that's a good reminder if you're posting, I'm paying attention to the recruitDC Facebook page. I think I saw some people commenting on the We Recruit DC page. I'm not looking at that one. If somebody else wants to maybe try to check that one out and monitor some comments there too. But if you have comments, you have questions, you have information you want to share, obviously post it right there onto the comment sections on whichever feed you're in. I think only the one for recruitDC would be archived. I don't know if we'll be able to see the other ones in the future, but at least you're making comments, you're engaging, and we appreciate it.
Awesome. So wait, so which one's not being covered? Do you want me to cover the other one?
Yeah, if you just jump into the We Recruit DC.
Okay.
I tried to load it up, but I didn't want to miss it.
Okay, got it. All right, I will take that.
I think we have one comment right now
All right.
on there.
Oh,
Kathleen.
Miss Kathleen, she commented. I didn't see what it was, so I tried to move over, but I lost my screen.
Somebody's gorgeous, and I think it's all of us she was referring to. So thanks, Kathleen.
And Tiffany, we talked about this too. You have a webinar coming up in the next week or so, a couple weeks?
Actually, yeah, June 11th. Wow, I thought it was much further out than it really is. So it is a couple of weeks. So doing a webinar for ERA Media on recruiting resilience. So we'll have some, talent leaders from, I think we have logistics, construction, we have the Chewy brand, and Proactive Talent is going to help mediate. So just questions around how organizations and talent functions are adjusting during the time of the pandemic, kind of like this unprecedented economic shift. So that'll be Thursday, June 11th online, obviously 2 p.m. Eastern for about an hour. So it's very much panel style and kind of how we're all, making everything work and kind of looking forward ahead and how we're planning for the future.
That's awesome.
And then Ben, thanks for posting this. This is you posted something about recruiterhunt.com. Looks like Carmen Hudson is I didn't click on it, so I don't know if it's a event or just resources. So go check that out as well. I trust anything that Ben will put up there is good. But yeah, Tiffany, we wanted to spend a few minutes kind of talking about your background a little bit. I know you've kind of moved from pure recruiting to pure sourcing now. So if you don't mind, give us a little bit of a history on your career.
And you have to start from the beginning.
We only have how much time? That's like 20 years of experience in 2 minutes. Wow. Okay. So I actually, everybody asks, how do you get into recruiting? How do you get into sourcing? And I really have to attribute me breaking into that field and really understanding what this industry is all about through a close friend of mine, Reem Ganem, who's still in the industry now. And so it was around a time when, newly married, trying to figure out what am I going to do and what will provide me flexibility and autonomy and what's something that I can do with my career background in anthropology. Is there any way to apply that learning to create some sort of career for myself outside of, going into academia? And so she was already into recruiting, kind of took me underneath her wing for a couple of weeks, told me and taught me everything that she knew. about recruiting back then. In the early 2000s, it was very much, job boards and how to use job boards and what the life cycle and the recruiting process was, and working with hiring managers and, intake sessions and strategy sessions. So got into that and luckily landed my first contract gig. And so was doing contract recruiting in an agency setting for a little bit of time before I was reached out to by Freddie Mac. And so Freddie Mac was looking to start up a sourcing function within their organization, and they reached out. Like I said, I didn't really even know what sourcing was, but what their concept of it in terms of like research-based and really helping to drive candidate identification and generation and qualification, kind of getting them into the talent pipeline for multiple recruiters and multiple business orgs, sounded like something that was, a challenge that I was willing to go after. So I joined Freddie Mac and got some really good training and experience, really on hands, in the moment learnings of what worked for me as a sourcer and what that really looked like, and trying to really build out that persona for them as well. And when I did that, went on a maternity leave. And then when I came back, realized I really like the contract gig. I like being able to kind of tip my toe into different industries, not really marrying myself long-term in a corporate recruiting setting, trying out different companies and different sizes and different roles. And so what I did is I put together my own agency. So I did Ballve LLC for a couple of years, where I basically just leveraged it as a contracting vehicle and just contracted myself out on as many contracting gigs as I could, right?
Was it just sourcing at that time, or were you proposing full life cycle recruiting?
It was sourcing and recruiting. So it was basically just exposing myself to all different aspects of recruiting and sourcing. So number one, it was like a moneymaker, right? It's like, okay, there's opportunities out there. It's a hot market. What can I do to generate income for me and my family? But it's also an opportunity for me to explore. I'm touching different industries. I'm touching different roles. I'm learning from a sourcing standpoint, what's the handoff? What's that look like? What tools are they leveraging for what type of talent? As a recruiter, it's how can I best engage with hiring managers, and just really learning from those around me. And so I did that all up until the time when I finally decided to go corporate back in 2009, I think. And then from there, it was just kind of joining all these little small tech startups, whether they're product or consulting in DC Metro, and just helping them experience hyper growth and build out teams and kind of make my exit, whether they get acquired or they go IPO. And then that's when, Microsoft came knocking on my door, and here I am.
Do you mind me asking, because one of the things that I think as a recruiter, I'm the classic extrovert. So, but there was always one side of me, that research side, which tends to, you want to go down the rabbit hole, and some people think that's a bad thing, but I'm like, oh my God, a rabbit hole. Yes, let's go into it, because I want to find out what I can learn. How much of your anthropology background and your science/research background really played into that side, which you don't typically expect in a recruiter, since you typically find people who are more extroverted in this field?
Yeah, that's a great question. And people don't believe me when I tell them that when I do those kind of like Myers-Briggs or other types of personality assessments, that like I'm like on the cusp between extrovert and introvert. I'm actually like 1 point into introvert than I am into extrovert, right? And so I feel like the extroverted aspect of me gets pulled out when I need to use it, right? It's just kind of like something that I can pull out of my toolkit, and I can pull on the extroverted face. And obviously a lot of that is when I'm engaging at work, right? And then when work's off and it's just like, give me a book, give me a nice Netflix series, and like, just leave me alone. Like, don't bother me for a couple of hours. But I always gravitated towards like the research and the solo work of recruiting. And in a perfect world for me as a sourcer, I would have really been on like the blind submittal, in terms of like, I will deep dive research. I will go down and chase those rabbit holes. I will do competitive intel and research. I'll build you out spreadsheets as much as you want. I'll build strings and I'll share them out, but don't make me ever talk to a candidate. Like I would have loved to just be like, I found these amazing, resumes, like here, somebody else go do something with them. Right. So that was kind of like a learning moment for me, is like, okay, you have to engage with people in a sourcing role in recruiting. And
Don't
so
make me talk to people. Come on.
yeah,
I
I'm like,
don't
can I just give you resumes and you do something with it?
do that.
But
Well, because there's different kinds of sourcing though too, right? I mean, there's different levels. There's the sourcing where all you do is just mine and find contact information, people in industries or from a company or a range of companies. And then there's some that actually will engage with a candidate, at least from a first couple of steps, you know, get
Right.
them into the ATS or get them over to the actual recruiter who will take them through to the end. And then there's other mixes in there too. Which area have you been mostly focused on? Is it just the pure identification, or do you qualify people too?
So when I was hands-on sourcing most recently, it would be all the way through qualification and kind of like the handoff, which I think is probably most typical for a sourcer recruiter handoff, is at like a tech screen or like a technical phone interview stage, right? Like I've qualified them through that. There's no redundancy in the fact that like a recruiter also needs to screen them to make sure that they're a fit. It's like you screen them, they're good, they're going straight to phone interview if that's the next step. So I would say the majority of the work that I've done is in that space. Granted, now with the largest team that I oversee, they're completely, all the way to the right, and the handoff is at offer. So it's, completely different. But I kind of lend it to the experience of having sat through different organizations, whether TA functions in small startups or large corporations, and how they do it, to understand like what options do we have and just kind of innovate along the way.
And I apologize for my cat a second ago.
I know, I was wondering, I didn't hear anything. I just saw your facial feedback and I was like, was that not a good answer?
Like,
I don't know what's going on.
No. It's the like I said, I told Tiffany and Suzie before, being home, the cat thinks it's going to get fed a lot earlier than it's supposed to. So about 3:30, exactly when I get on with a lot of meetings, and this thing just goes nuts and starts making a whole bunch of noise in the background. So that's the new world, right? So great answer though. I wasn't
Thank you.
mocking your answer. I was like, no, that's a terrible answer.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think unless you're actually in our industry, you really wouldn't know that that segment of recruiter population actually existed. Like you wouldn't necessarily think that that's a career possibility. And I know one of the things that I really have grown to understand during my tenure in this, not only in this industry, but as part of recruitDC, is that there are so many different segments of recruiters. Like there are, the recruiters who play a role that it's just a part of their role as an HR manager. There's a recruiter, full life cycle recruiter from the agency perspective, which is where I got my start. And so we did full desk. I mean, we were possibly even talking to the client as well as the candidate, and then sourcing them and then moving them through the process. And it wasn't until we, Tiffany, where I met you was at Booz Allen, where there was, if you were one of the lucky recruiters to got a dedicated sourcer, you're like doing your happy dance. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. Someone who's going to do the stuff that I don't have time to do and still keep my job. Right. So it's unexpected. And I don't know that there are other recruiters out there who are just new to the industry who understand that there are segments or career paths for them that would sort of feed their bug around research, but not necessarily engaging candidates, but they can if they want to. Because those are
no, that's true. And I think on top of that as well, you have a lot of TA leaders that might not have much exposure, and it's getting better now, but historically this was always an issue that we had, is TA leaders that didn't much have exposure to sourcing in that function and would always treat it as a junior recruiter role, right? Like, okay, you'll start off as a recruiting coordinator, and then you'll grow into a sourcer, and then you'll grow into a recruiter, and then you have management opportunities like that. And so that's something the sourcing community, even to this day, we're still combating, because we have people that just want to be lifelong sourcers. And like, I would be in that bucket if I didn't want to like move on to like management and leadership opportunities, right? Like, I just wanted to kind of rise through the ranks as a sourcer. And for me, moving into Client Align didn't mean a promotion. It meant leveraging another skill set that I either had to choose that I wanted to go that direction, or I wanted to be more on like the candidate identification, the candidate relationship side of the house versus always business relationship.
So real quick, there's a question on the comments here from Carl. I'll Carl Dillinger. What are some soft sourcing techniques you have used in the past to engage with passive candidates? He says, we currently have several jobs on hold, but want to have candidates in line when they become available, when the positions become available, I assume. What are the best ways to recruit/source when an active job is not currently available? Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, pipelining is always tough. This concept of, oh, just keep the candidate warm for 6 months, like as if that's just something that we just turn on like the faucet on like a certain temperature, just leave it running like that. It takes time to cultivate those relationships. And so it really depends on what your volume is as to what your approach could be, right? You have those sourcers that are very much in like niche markets, and they're able to really have kind of like a one to few relationship. So like maybe like one talent sourcer is really trying to engage and cultivate relationships with maybe like 10 candidates at any given moment for like 2 really strategic positions they're trying to fill. Sorry, my son's playing drums on the stair right now. So I feel like that approach would be more of keeping in touch with the talent, keeping them abreast of things that are going on, sharing learnings, or if there's specific blogs or influencers that you might follow, or, right now a lot of like in tech, I can obviously speak to tech because that's the industry that I'm in now. Like a lot of conferences are going virtual and they're offering free tickets. So it's like sharing that, just continuing that rapport and maintaining that trusted advisor status. Because I feel like a lot of sourcers and recruiters alike, they fall off that trusted advisor status when there's no opportunity and like you never hear from them again. It's like, oh, okay, like I was just a number because the opportunity went away and you showed all this interest into me, and then now you don't even, you're ghosting me, right? So for the one to few relationship, I would say build that rapport, stay on top of them, kind of, put calendar reminders or LinkedIn updates to reach out to them on a fairly consistent cadence, whatever that may be, even if it's just a small check-in to see what's going on. When you're in high volume industries where it's a one-to-many approach and the talent sourcer is trying to cultivate relationships with hundreds of candidates for hundreds of opportunities, something that we're doing right now, aside from building pipelines and talent pools of qualified talent in our applicant tracking system in our CRM, is thinking of some sort of like broadcast or newsletter, something that will like hit these folks on a consistent basis. And again, like relevant information. It's not like sharing like, here's our top 5 jobs, right? It has to be something that's engaging, and it's like there's a what's in it for me, like something that will actually drive me to open. So that's a little bit of an easier approach when you have lots of people you're trying to stay on top of.
Yeah, I was thinking myself. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Suzie.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was kind of thinking that usually when you have those, I don't know what Carl recruits for. It could be tech, may not be, but the way I think now is you almost have to think like everything is more high volume. Use some of those same tactics as you may have used in your high volume roles in your what would normally be a low volume role. Something you may only keep a couple people, but now you have a chance maybe to get 10, 15, 20 people that may be interested now in your company, and you have to apply some of those higher volume tactics that you would use on customer service reps or customer support type roles that are higher volume into your software engineering roles or other types that are more of a one-off type position.
Is there, from a sourcing perspective, do you find that there are different methodologies, or is one needed based on whether or not you have a very high profile organization or company that you are recruiting for, and you have way more inbound inquiries than not? If you're working for a startup that has no brand or name recognition, does that affect your strategy?
I mean, it could. The only thing that you have to stay on top of is when you have like those strong talent brand companies and you have a lot of inbound and you're not hiring at that moment, or hiring is slowed down or frozen for that instance, you don't want to let all that inbound talent build up, right? Like you should still be active in qualifying that talent and engaging with that talent when it makes sense in terms of like they're a fit for the company, whatever it may be, but level setting expectations with the candidate right out the front, right? It's just like, we're taking a little bit of a pause right now, or we expect these opportunities to reopen in X number of weeks or months, so that they have that common understanding, and you're starting off fully transparent from the beginning. I think that bait and switch is what really gives recruiters a bad name. And so it's just staying honest to that. And so that's when you have the ability to really drive inbound. But it's really, people tend to think also, like, if you have a really strong brand, you should have a really easy job just landing talent, but it's not the case, because we still have a lot of compete issues with our top competitors, where they have the same talent that's coming in, and now we're competing for the same talent. Granted, we might have more applications, but like that top 1%, we still have competitive nature in that regard. So you have to really be intentional with how you're building those relationships.
Yeah, the honesty and the trust factor built from that first conversation. We kind of do this all the time, though. I mean, some companies do have attractor recs out there just for that reason. I mean, in my company, we hardly ever take our tech support positions down. We always, every time we get more customers, we have to hire more. So we don't know when we're going to land those customers. So,
right.
And once we get to a certain threshold, we have to hire at least one or two more. And we kind of tell people that, I mean, you have to be honest and upfront with them. And I don't think anybody's going to fault you if they apply for a position, and you call them and say, hey, this is what this is. We're anticipating this. Here's how we look for our hiring going forward and what we're doing, and just being honest with candidates about where they stand in the mix. And in this time, what's going on today, it's going to be frustrating for them. But as you said, don't bait and switch them, thinking that there's something really heavy going on. And then you also want to talk about some of the timing. This isn't going to be we're going to jam 5 interviews with you in the next 5 days so we can make our decision by the end of the week. It could be next quarter. Right.
And that's applicable even outside of the current situation, right? Like if historically that your screen to offer process is pretty lengthy, like give them a heads up in the front end of those conversations, right? Level set expectations. I have a lot of friends I've recently interviewed and they're still waiting feedback. I'm like, well, what did the recruiter tell you before you interviewed? Nothing. Like, so the recruiter didn't say, I'll get back to you in X number of days or hours or whatever it is after your interview to give you feedback. I'm like, no. I'm like, wow, like that's an area of opportunity, right? Yep. Something so easy that can go a long way.
I feel like we could talk about this forever, but we do time check. We only got a couple minutes left. So.
I'm going to throw this out. I know when we had talked during our last session, we talked a little bit about how COVID is changing our process and making sure that the candidate understands the difference between now and maybe down the road in the future during more normal times. Has that affected your sourcing time frame at all? Like, is it easier? I think we talked about it was easier to find the candidates, but moving them through the process was a little bit different because they're a little bit more responsive. Have you found from a sourcing perspective, response rates are higher?
It's funny because right now response rates are higher, but you still have a lot of trepidation from talent that are looking to move. Like they're secure. They are not sure with the economic, downturn or upturn, what that will look like in the next couple of months. And so they want to be stable. And so while they might respond and they're interested, their response is like, now's not the time because I don't want to be last in, first out if anything happens.
That makes sense.
And that makes sense, right? So like we totally get it. And so right now what we're doing as well is just trying to kind of mine talent internally as well for any opportunities that we have. Sorry, like I literally have like a circus going on.
You need to make sure your kids are okay.
There's a nail gun somewhere and I'm hoping
can we take bets? Can we take some bets on that? Can you put your kids on the board and we can pick who's going to do what?
Yeah. Survive this half hour.
That's funny. But to that point though, you're gonna have to come to the table with a lot of strong arguments as to why this is the right move for them, and you're gonna have to know about the business, right? You're gonna have to know what the sales pipeline looks like, and that hey, we are closing deals. Some companies are better at sharing that information than others, but that's your chance as a recruiter to go in and talk to the business and say, why is somebody gonna come here now? What's the reason? From a business reason, from the technology reason, because I think the technology stack is not going to be as an important thing. Some people will be, but the stability now is now a factor. So I think as recruiters, we need to go back into the business and build those arguments that will allow you to answer those questions on why are we stable now versus your current company or another option that somebody may have.
Right.
Something a lot of people don't do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know in terms of the companies that are still, he's getting really excited about this nail gun that's going off. So apologies.
I have to stop you for just a second. Why do you have a nail gun accessible by children under the age of 10?
Not accessible. We have a contractor working on the house, and the timing apparently did not pass from Google Calendar to husband when scheduling. So lesson learned, lesson learned.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
Your kids are alive. That's all that matters.
Yes, hopefully we'll
For
see.
now.
Yeah.
At least you know what they get them for Christmas next year. You know,
nail gun.
whatever the next big holiday, go ahead and get them a nail gun. Well, the finishing nail gun. They're only about that big.
Yeah.
They only puncture the skin a little bit. It's fine.
Yeah, they're easy to pull out.
Right. All right. Any last thoughts from anybody? We'll probably wrap this up here in the next minute or two. I've been kind of failing at the questions online here, so.
No, I think a big thing for us as well, and we're doing this internally, but I highly suggest that we continue to drive this as a community is sharing lessons learned, through this period and kind of best practices. And we're taking an internal approach as well, just to be like, hey, now's a great time to really focus on our foundation as a sourcing function, right? Like, where can we go in and kind of insert efficiencies and optimization opportunities before we have to scale again? What does that look like? And so I think that's, something that as a community, we can all drive lessons from our different experiences and help one another. And I hope we continue to drive that forward.
Awesome. I know there was one question since I was monitoring one of the boards. I think Mansour, is it Qureshi? I hope I didn't slaughter your name. So if I did, I apologize. The question he posed was, when do you think the market will reopen again? And when do we anticipate a flow of requisitions? Is that even possible for any one of us in our situations to even guess at?
I'm no economist, I'm no Wall Street expert or anything like that, but a lot of what I'm hearing is you're not going to see anything until Q2 results come out. So that means probably not until mid third quarter and even into fourth quarter, which then kind of throws you into 2021. I'm not saying it's going to take that long, but I think it's also going to be industry by industry. There's certain things that are going to open up faster than others, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of new things in certain areas for at least another 6-7 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And I know I support the federal government space, so I know as we approach October, which is traditionally the federal year, we tend to see things pick up towards late August, early September, as they're spending their dollars. But I have no idea whether or not that will, civilian versus defense versus IC, whether any of that will be impacted based on sort of restrictions and work from home restrictions currently. So unfortunately, I just have no insight to that.
Yeah.
And that's going to be another one as far as the work from how work is going to look, where you go, how you go there, and who gets to go. That's another big question. And I don't, there's other situations that you have to think about with regards to who can go back, but I don't think that's going to impact. It's going to impact who can actually apply for jobs. But when you talk about schools, what that's going to look like if they do this A/B day or A/B week thing. Can I even apply for that job now? Am I even going to be qualified to do whatever it needs to be done? There's a lot of things that have to go into consideration for the kind of candidates we need and who's going to be able to do what we need them to do. So there's got to be a lot of insight on flexibility within the company. And again, that's another question to start bringing up to your managers. Get involved in those conversations about when we start recruiting again. Mm-hmm. What are the challenges we're going to face, and what do we have to be ready to answer, or at least advise your client base on? For those that are in-house, for those that are doing consulting, I think that's something you have to think about with your customers as well.
Right. And I know we're coming up on 4 o'clock, and I don't know. I mean, I think we passed
Sorry,
4 o'clock.
we're
But
past.
yeah, so
That's
there's,
okay.
I mean, I have a lot of questions, especially since maybe we posed this question for the next 2 weeks, you know, with the announcement of, I think, Twitter and Google and one other large firm saying we will work from home forever, or at least for a very sizable time. How does that, you know, change the workforce, or job seekers now moving or perhaps migrating to, I want to be a telework from home type of person for the rest of my life? And how do you compete against that if you're a technology person? So actually, we're in any field for that case.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, from a recruiter sourcer standpoint, it's great because if you're one of those companies moving towards that model, it opens up so much more
Your
talent.
geography is all of a sudden.
But if you're not, then now you're competing with that work stream. But I mean, you kind of see it in pockets pre-COVID for recruiting and sourcing, where you have those folks that are like, I just want remote. And like the first question you get when a job's posted on We Recruit DC or any of these sites are like, is it remote? Right? Like, so we're already seeing that in some industries where that's been kind of a game changer.
I totally agree with you.
Talent you can tap into versus not. So it'll be interesting to see what it does to other industries.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Tiffany, I can't tell you how exciting it was to have you. Yay!
Regular guest, right? Guest.
I'm for it.
Absolutely. And Matt, as always, great to see you and your unique background.
I gotta do something different all the time. So, but yeah, to that point though, as far as guests or questions, if you have something, I think we have several ways for you to get in touch with us on your interest or question that you want to ask. But if you want to come on, you got something to talk about, you know, we can structure a whole half hour all about
we have a couple people who've expressed interest, so we'll start reaching out to you. If you are listening, we'll reach out to you to talk to you about which episode, if we're calling them that. I don't know.
We're gonna have to start tracking that, right?
Besides the Star Trek theme, it has to be an episode.
S1E3 is going to be on S1E4.
We'll have you join. Exactly. All right.
Appreciate everybody joining in, watching the recording.
I'm pretending to be hard.
Right. Everybody stay safe. Have a great rest of the week. And we should have said, we didn't say this. We talked about tomorrow is kind of a sad day because it was supposed to be our event. It's supposed to be the live Recruit DC event tomorrow.
In
theory, we would have all been together, and especially with the majority of people who are noticed making notes on our Facebook comments, we would have typically been all together starting tonight and all day tomorrow. You guys will be definitely missed.
Yeah,
I'm just hanging out with you in person, definitely.
Yeah, so this is no substitute for it, but I'm glad we're able to do this. So.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, well, everybody enjoy. Hopefully, a long, safe weekend. We have Memorial Day on Monday, so guys enjoy. Hopefully, there's nice weather. Usually, it rains on Memorial Day around here, and I know. But thanks again, Tiffany, Susie, and you guys have a great rest of the week.
Matt. Bye, Tiffany.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, Susie. Bye, Matt.
Good luck with that nail gun.
Oh, yeah. See you.